wherever you're tuning in from. Maybe cruising down a quiet road with the windows cracked, the hum of the engine keeping you company. Or maybe you're curled up on the couch, winding down after a long day. What's on your mind tonight? You ever find yourself in that mood where a good story just hits different? Like when the world's too loud and you're craving something real, something that pulls you in and makes you feel alive. When's the last time you heard a tale that made your heart race, made you lean in closer, wondering what's going to happen next? Picture this: a dusty diner on a forgotten highway, where the air's thick with secrets, and one small moment, a glance, a whisper could change everything. You ready to step into that world with me? Because this story's got twists that'll keep you hooked, and it all starts with a man, a dog, and a cry for help no one else saw coming. A seemingly ordinary day on a deserted highway. A heavy-duty motorcycle glided in the dazzling sunlight. The rider was Colonel Marcus Thorne, a seasoned military officer enjoying a rare moment of peace. Little did he know that in just a few minutes, his life would be turned upside down by a familiar yet unjust situation. The sudden appearance of a police car with blaring sirens shattered the tranquility. It was Officer Miller, a young, arrogant officer who looked at the bike and immediately assumed the rider was a thief. He ordered Thorne to stop and get off the bike, his attitude condescending and full of contempt. Thorne, with the composure of a man who had been through many battles, complied. Miller searched Thorne's belongings, found a stack of military documents, and scoffed. "A colonel? Sure, if you're a colonel, I'm the commander-in-chief." While Miller continued to mock him, Thorne remained calm, his face terrifyingly still. Thorne spoke only one sentence, his voice low but firm. "I just need to make one call." Miller laughed loudly, but Thorne, with a mysterious look in his eyes, added, "You have 10 minutes to change everything." Miller and his partner left, leaving Thorne standing there. And then the unexpected happened. A convoy of 50 military Humvees began advancing toward them. Miller didn't know that Thorne was not just an ordinary man, he was a brilliant strategist. Will Miller realize his mistake? What will happen when an abuser of power confronts real power? Let's listen to this dramatic story. This story begins not with a bang, but with a whisper of heat rising from the asphalt. The sun beats down on a seemingly endless stretch of highway in a small town called Prosperity Creek. It's the kind of place you drive through without a second thought, a postcard-perfect town with a name that promised more than it could deliver. Our main character is a man named Colonel Marcus Thorne. You wouldn't know it from the way he's dressed in riding leathers on a custom-built Harley. He looks like a man just enjoying a Sunday ride, not a man who has commanded entire armies. He's got an easy calm about him, a stillness in his eyes that only comes from having seen things that would break most people. He wasn't looking for trouble. In fact, he was on his way to speak at a charity event for veterans' mental health. The silence is broken by the wail of a siren, sudden and sharp. A patrol car, driven by Officer Miller, screeches to a halt behind him. Miller gets out a swagger in his step and a scowl on his face, as if Thorne's very presence is a personal affront. His partner, Officer Jenkins, hangs back, an anxious energy about him. "Fancy bike for your kind." Miller sneers, his hand already on his weapon. "Where'd you steal it?" Thorne doesn't flinch. He holds his hands up, a picture of calm. He's dealt with this before, not just in a personal sense, but on a strategic level. He spent 30 years learning to see the whole battlefield, not just the single confrontation in front of him. But Miller isn't interested in seeing the bigger picture. He's here to prove a point. As Miller roughly pulls the military documents from Thorne's saddlebags, he sees the name Colonel Marcus Thorne. A mocking laugh escapes his lips. "A colonel, huh? That's rich. If you're a colonel, then I guess I'm the commander-in-chief." The mockery bites, but Thorne remains still. He doesn't plead, doesn't argue, doesn't try to pull rank. He simply speaks his voice, a low, commanding rumble that cuts through Miller's bravado. "I need to make one call." Miller laughs again, a harsh, brittle sound. Lawyers don't work roadside. He's enjoying this. The power he thinks he holds, the fear he believes he's inspiring. But what he doesn't realize is that the man he's humiliating isn't just a biker. He's a tactical genius, a master of logistics. A dangerous calm settles over Thorne's face. This isn't anger. It's the moment before the hammer falls. He looks at Miller, his eyes cold and unwavering. "You have 10 minutes." He says, his voice a quiet warning before you burn down everything you think you own. The patrol car pulls away, leaving Thorne cuffed on the side of the road with a silent timer ticking in his head. What could a man on the ground possibly do to an officer who just left? Well, it turns out a whole lot more than you'd think. Unseen, a military satellite 200 miles above them silently changes its flight path. The clock is counting down, and the fuse is lit. This is the moment where our story truly begins, the calm before the storm. The question isn't what Miller did, but what happens next. The answer isn't what you'd expect. 10 minutes. That's all the time Colonel Thorne gave them. 10 minutes for the entire universe to change. As he knelt there, the sharp gravel digging into his skin, the hot sun beating down on his back, his mind didn't race with panic. Instead, it drifted back to a different kind of heat, the dry, searing heat of an Afghan desert almost 2 decades ago. He was a young officer then, fresh out of the academy on his first real mission. The mission was a success, but back at the base, an older, more cynical sergeant had looked at him and said, "Thorne, you're the smartest man in the room, but you ain't the toughest. The desert's gonna chew you up and spit you out if you don't learn when to get loud." But Thorne didn't get loud. He learned something else entirely. He learned that the quiet ones, the ones who listened more than they spoke, were the ones who truly commanded respect. He learned that true authority isn't about making a scene. It's about having a plan. That day, he calmly diffused a situation that could have turned deadly, not with a shout, but with a whisper. He knew that the loudest sound on a battlefield is often the silence just before a well-executed plan unfolds. That memory came flooding back to him on the side of that dusty road in Prosperity Creek. Officer Miller's arrogance was a cheap imitation of power. It was hollow, a paper-thin facade that would crumble under any real pressure. Thorne's own power, forged in the crucible of countless missions and a lifetime of integrity, was built on an entirely different foundation. It was the power of principle. He knew his worth. He didn't need to prove it. The distant rumble grew louder. It wasn't a single sound. It was a symphony of power, a low, steady thrum that vibrated through the ground. First, it was just a faint echo, then a distinct silhouette on the horizon. Not one truck, not two. A full convoy of military vehicles painted in desert camouflage moved with a silent, disciplined purpose. Officer Miller, who was now sitting smugly in his patrol car sipping from a water bottle, suddenly choked on his drink. He watched in disbelief as the line of Humvees, each one a symbol of Thorne's real-world command, surrounded the scene. The trucks didn't make a fuss. There were no flashing lights or sirens. They simply appeared, a perfectly executed maneuver, a testament to the quiet authority of the man on the ground. The very air around them seemed to drop a few degrees. This was not a show of force. This was a masterclass in logistics, a silent display of a power that Officer Miller could never comprehend. This was the moment where principle met power. And in a world of loudmouths and braggarts, it was the quiet storm that was about to change everything. The 10-minute timer was a silent, unyielding force, a promise of a coming storm. Miller, however, was blissfully unaware. As he and Jenkins drove away, he was already savoring the memory, a small, triumphant smile on his face. This was a win for him, a man in uniform putting a big shot back in his place. He had no idea he was a pawn in a game he didn't even know was being played. Then the first silhouette appeared on the horizon, followed by another and another. It was like a mirage, a trick of the heat. But the low, resonant thrumming was real, a deep sound that seemed to shake the very foundations of the highway. Miller's smile vanished. His knuckles turned white on the steering wheel as a full convoy of military Humvees, dozens strong, rolled toward them. The trucks were pristine, each one a testament to discipline and precision. They didn't use sirens or flashing lights. They simply surrounded the scene with a cold, terrifying efficiency, their formation an unspoken display of overwhelming force. The lead vehicle stopped directly in front of Miller's patrol car. A young captain stepped out, her posture so rigid it seemed she was carved from stone. She walked to Thorne, snapped a perfect, crisp salute, and said, "Colonel, we are here to assist." Miller was speechless. The swagger was gone, replaced by a look of total shock and fear. The captain turned to him, her voice calm but her eyes like ice. "Officer Miller, your actions have triggered a full-scale military investigation. We have the entire incident on video and audio. Please, step out of your vehicle." Thorne, who had been watching this unfold with the same cool detachment he'd used to survey a battlefield, didn't say a word. He didn't need to. The lesson was being delivered not with shouts, but with the silent, humbling weight of a consequence Miller never saw coming. The most powerful men don't have to show their power. It shows up for them. With his documents restored, Thorne simply got back on his bike. He didn't offer a lecture, a victory speech, or a single scornful look. He just started his engine, a quiet roar that was a final punctuation mark on Miller's defeat. As he rode off, the convoy remained a silent monument to the power of principle, leaving Miller to face the consequences alone. This was not about revenge. It was about the fundamental truth that a man of character will always eventually stand taller than a man of authority alone. The aftermath of that day wasn't a Hollywood movie scene with news vans and flashing lights. It was something far more profound, a quiet, inexorable change that began to ripple through Prosperity Creek. The town's police department, shaken by the incident, was forced to confront the difference between authority and power. Miller was, of course, gone. But it was Officer Jenkins, the silent accomplice, who truly carried the weight of that day. He'd watched the humbling of a man he thought was a mentor and the quiet dignity of a man he'd helped humiliate. It changed him. A year later, Colonel Thorne returned. This time he wasn't on a Harley. He was at the town hall giving a speech to a room full of community members and police officers. He didn't mention the incident directly. Instead, he spoke about leadership and trust, his voice resonating with an authority that had nothing to do with rank. A year ago, he said, this town saw what happens when a badge is mistaken for character. But the real story isn't about that moment. It's about what happened next. It's about the hard, quiet work of rebuilding trust. We didn't need new values. We needed to align our actions with the values we already had. As the forum ended, a figure approached him. It was Jenkins, but he was different. His uniform was gone, replaced by a simple polo shirt. There was a genuine humility in his eyes that wasn't there before. "Sir," he said, his voice a little shaky, "I'm training new officers now. Every week I tell them your story. It's the best lesson I've ever had." Thorne smiled a rare, genuine smile. "Don't just tell them my story," he said, "tell them yours. Tell them about the day you chose to change. Everyone has moments when they choose between what's easy and what's right." They shook hands, a silent pact of understanding and forgiveness. It was a simple, quiet moment, but it was the true climax of the story. It was the proof that a single act of principle can create a ripple effect of change. The sun began to set, casting a warm, golden glow across the landscape as Colonel Thorne rode away. The Humvees were a distant memory now, and the silence of the open road returned. But it wasn't the same silence. It was a silence filled with purpose, with the quiet satisfaction of a lesson taught and a soul healed. He thought about Jenkins, about the hard, humbling road he had chosen. That was the real victory, not the fleeting moment of power on the highway. As the miles passed, Thorne felt a familiar vibration, not from the engine, but from his phone. It was an unfamiliar number. He answered, his voice calm as the evening air. "This is Thorne, Colonel Thorne. This is Sarah Chen from the White House," a voice on the other end said. "We received a full report from your task force on military-civilian relations. The President has been following your work. We'd like you to consider a national role to lead a new initiative based on the principles you demonstrated. Thorne smiled. The call wasn't about a single incident. It was about the legacy of a lifetime of principled action. It wasn't about a battle he won, but about the thousands of small, quiet choices that had led to this moment. The authority he possessed wasn't given to him by a title or a rank. It was earned every single day through integrity, humility, and unwavering strength. And as he rode into the sunset, the story wasn't over. It was just beginning. It was a testament that true authority comes not from power, but from principle, and that one person armed with a powerful story and an unshakable will can change the world. If this story resonated with you, it's because it's not just a story. It's a reflection of the silent battles many of us fight every day. True power isn't about crushing your enemies. It's about inspiring change. And stories have the power to do just that. If you believe in the power of a great story, subscribe to our channel, 10Ken, and hit that notification bell. We release new videos every week that will inspire you, make you think, and remind you that your journey has a purpose. What was the most impactful lesson you learned from this story? Share your thoughts in the comments below. Your story could be the next one we tell.